Yes, born in Oklahoma City. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, it gets confusing.
So I actually met you once, Trenton, when you came to RISD.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah,
Was
you were so
years ago.
popular. People would just, they loved you. I mean, I loved
I
you
got
too,
have.
but I couldn't go
Oh,
partying with you.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a great visit. I remember.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
were such a hit.
Well, they were. It was a great program and really good people.
Mhm.
It was good.
Wow, lots of friends, lots of colleagues, lots of artists. Yeah, very nice. Hello, everyone. Woo! Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we're good. It's so good to see, like Paula said, so many familiar faces, but also some new folks. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Diane.
Farouk is here. Brittany. Oh my gosh, Sarah
It's all right with everybody. I'm going to go ahead and do my spiel. We'll get started. I know we'll have some more folks joining us, but we want to make sure that we have the most time for our lovely speakers tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to, for those of you who are new to the program, hi, I'm Abby King. I facilitate these Zoom events each week, and I'm just going to quickly go over a little kind of Zoom etiquette for our talk before I turn it over to folks. So to start with, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. So, like I said, I'll talk about muting and unmuting in just a second, but I wanted to say welcome to another PAFA Pours. It's so nice to see all of you. I wanted to raise a glass to all of our PAFA members. Thank you for keeping us PAFA strong, and for everybody who's here on the call. So cheers to all of you. I hope you have some sort of cold beverage in this hot day, at least we have here in Philly. But again, welcome to everybody. So I want to just quickly start by saying, even though I just muted everybody, that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. Zoom likes to assume it knows who the speaker is, so I am going to ask you just to stay on mute unless you're actively speaking. So we're going to facilitate a conversation towards the end of this program, but feel free to drop things in the chat while you're here. So I'm going to start that here. We do want to hear from you. PAFA Pours is a very conversational-based program, so feel free to drop links, questions, thoughts throughout the whole program in the chat box. The other thing is, if you'd like to virtually raise your hand, we are going to ask you to save questions towards the end. Paula has a beautiful slideshow that she's going to be showing throughout, but then we will have time for question and answer. So if you'd like to raise your hand at that point, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, if you're on a computer, there's a participant button. When you click on that, on the right-hand side of your screen, there's this little raise hand button. So you can click on that. We'll be able to see you. We'll call on you, and that's how we're going to facilitate the Q&A. If all else, feel free to just say something in the chat if you can't figure out where that button is, or your iPad is being funny, or feel like this, somebody will find you. But it's just a little easier if you can try that function first. A few quick things. Zoom also basically just has two views that you can experience today. So if I'm the big talking head at the bottom of your screen, you're in speaker mode. That is what I'd recommend you keep the presentation in, at least for the beginning, the program. That way that you can see Paula, and then Nell, and then Trenton very large. The other thing I'd recommend when we get to the Q&A, if you'd like to be able to see everybody, like I can see right now a really wonderful screen with Brooke and Sarah McEnany and Paula and our speakers. You can go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen and click on where it says gallery view, which I think is Brady Bunch. So when it becomes more of a conversation, feel free to switch in between screens, whatever really feels the best for you. Other functions to be aware of, just real quick, is next to that mute button that's a couple over from participants, is a little video icon. I want to mention that we are recording today's event. So if you don't want to be on screen or on camera, feel free to silence your screen that way. No one will be able to see you. I will mention, if you're not actively asking a question or speaking, you won't really be on the recording, but that's just an option to keep in mind. The other thing is that we do upload these to PAFA's YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, type in PAFA, you'll be able to see a wonderful library of the past. I think we've been doing this now for almost 9 weeks. It's hard to believe. but feel free to check those out. We normally have about a 24-hour turnaround period before it's online, so feel free to check back in for more videos there. Other than that, I think one other option that might be worth mentioning is if you'd like to pin one of our speakers, that's a good way. Since we do have 35 people on the call, feel free if you want to find their square. We've got Nell Painter. Nell, I'm going to unmute you and have you say hi real quick. Nope. Actually, I'll have Paula introduce them in just a second. But feel free, if you see the little 3 dots on the top of their screen, if you click on that, there's a drop-down menu, you can pin one of the other speakers, and that way you won't lose them in the conversation once we get started. Anyways, it's now my pleasure to hand you over to the director of the Brodsky Center, Paola Morsiani. I want to thank her and, of course, our special guests, Nell Painter and Trenton Doyle Hancock, for being with us tonight. So welcome, Paola. Yeah, let me unmute
my brother. Here we are. Thank you, Abby, and thank you for hosting our programs this week. We welcome everybody to this talk with artist Nell Painter. Wave, Nell, can you wave? And Trenton Doyle Hancock. Yay!
Hello.
There you go. We look forward to learning more about your work. The work that Trenton and Nell create shares in a narrative format in which personal experience is interwoven with what we can call political expression or a stance vis-a-vis living in the present. They both use very different strategies, but their work impact us as audiences through thought and awareness processes that engage our social investigations. We are also tonight looking at their work specifically from the perspective of the works that they created at the Brodsky Center. The Brodsky Center is a program that of the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and we are a part of particularly of the school, but we also work with the museum, and our museum director is also present tonight, Brooke Davis Anderson. And the Brodsky Center was founded in 1986 at Rutgers University, and in 2018 we've moved to PAFA. We invite artists to create work with our master printers and our master paper makers, and the artists that we invite engage with our students. Also through the vision of our founder, Julie Brodsky, the center has engaged particularly with artists whose background, gender, and ideas have been disregarded by the mainstream world. We have worked over 30 years with over 300 artists, and a selection of the works made at the Brodsky Center will be offered through an online sale starting tomorrow at noon and ending on Thursday at 7 p.m. And we will offer extraordinarily some discounts. This one time only. The works by Nell and Trenton will be also included in this online sale. And I wish to point out to you our sales manager, Lee Werrell, who masterminded this sale. So if you would like, in the context of this event, to ask her any questions about this, you can do so through our chat function, the Zoom chat function. I will show you now, I will switch now to a PowerPoint that includes images of the works created by Nell and by Trenton. It will start with a few images of the Brodsky Center itself, so you see where we are and where we operate from. And then I will introduce Nell Painter, who will speak about the editions that she created at the Brodsky Center. And then I will introduce Trenton, who will speak about his own edition. And then we will open it up to questions from you. I will now share the screen. here it is. This is share. Sorry. And what is this? I am sorry. Hold on a second. I need to go back to the beginning. Am I? Sorry. Let me just, I was in the wrong slide. So here is share. Here we go. Share. From the start. Here we are. There you go. So I wanted to show you very briefly that we have a paper making studio where artists can create with our master paper maker handmade paper, works in handmade paper. We don't have our own printmaking studio yet at PAFA, but we're using the print department studios, which is amazing and has a lot of presses and an amazing space. We have a very large archive and inventory of almost 4,000 works. And I work with students to keep it up to date, to keep it in order. And we also have a beautiful showroom where especially Lee Werrell works with collectors who are interested in our works. And now I will introduce you to the work of Nell Painter, who is seen here working with us. She came to us in 2016, I believe, or it was 17. And this was a studio that we had at Rutgers University. Just a brief introduction to say that Nell Irving Painter lives and works in Newark, New Jersey, but is now actually talking to us from her home in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. And she is Edwards Professor of American History Emerita at Princeton University, where she taught since 1918. She holds a PhD in American History from Harvard University and a Bachelor of Science from the University of California at Berkeley. Among her numerous influential publications as a historian, I will mention Creating Black Americans, published in 2006, and The History of White People in 2010. After retiring as a professor, Nell Painter enrolled at Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers, where she obtained her BFA in 2009, and then at Rhode Island School of Design, where she obtained her MFA in 2011. Her works is in private and public collections, and her most recent solo exhibition was held at the Smith Center at Harvard University this past fall. Nell, you can take it from here.
Yeah, thank you, Paola. First of all, I just want to mention the death of one of the artists in residence at the Brodsky Center, a wonderful painter, Emma Amos. And Emma is very much missed, a very distinguished painter, and she also was on the faculty at Mason Gross. So I personally benefited from her as a mentor. As for my artwork, I work back and forth between the hand and the computer. It's digital, it's manual. Sometimes you see the trace of the hand and sometimes you don't. But my work always bears the traces of my past as a historian. I used to joke that one of my great drawbacks as an artist was that I'm academic, and I am academic. There's no more academicer person than me. And for a long time, that seemed like a handicap, but I now see it as part of what makes my art my art. So I no longer shy away from including history. And I think the turning point for me in that change took place in February and March 2017 when I was at the Brodsky Center. Before Brodsky, I mostly did not work very politically. My work I have a lot of self-portraits. What you're seeing here is a self-portrait. It's called Wise Woman Disappears. That's me on both sides. And I really enjoyed being self-centered as an artist, because as a scholar, I couldn't do that. I couldn't be self-centered as a scholar. But I definitely have been. But in early 2017, like so many of us, I was just totally blasted by the turn in national politics. It was just devastating. So politics started showing up in my work at the Brodsky Center, with this piece in particular. And it's, you say, this can't be America. And this was something I actually heard at the Brodsky Center, but it was something that was very current in early 2017, of people saying, oh, I just don't know, this is the worst thing ever. It can't be America. It's not the America I know. No, this can't really be America. And I say, and that's me on the right side, I say, yeah, this is America, and this is the America I know from history. And it concludes with, if you really want to know what history makes this so crystal clear, it's the history of the American South and the history of the American West. If you really wanted to look, of course, you could find similar things that don't necessarily look what we think of as American in the North, in the Northeast, but it's glaring in Western history and Southern history. So I think this is probably my most popular piece from the Brodsky Center, isn't it, Paola?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, all of your pieces are very popular. Let's say that.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So the self-portraits pick up the background that you see several times in these pieces is actually a rendering of a piece of cloth that I bought in Nigeria in the 1960s when I lived in West Africa. And so I reconfigured this, this pattern, this textile pattern, with my own eyes. So these are a version of self-portraiture as well. And they capture the freedom that I so enjoy as a visual artist, which is a freedom that I did not have as a historian, where the historian's charge is to make sense of what's in the archives. So you must respect the archive in history in a way that you don't have to in art. So let's see, do you have other pieces from Brodsky?
No, these are all the pieces you made at Brodsky.
All right. Let's go to the new work here. This is an artist book. I turned to making artist books a few years after leaving RISD, because that felt so natural. I love to make books and I love narratives. So this is the most recent one, and it's from February and March of this year. I was in residence at the Fondazione Bogliasco in Liguria, in the region of Genova in Italy. And my project was American Whiteness Since Trump. You mentioned my book, The History of White People, which has been a very popular book. It's one of the few books that actually takes a scholarly look on the longue durée of constructions of whiteness in the United States. So it's a book that ends actually in 2010 when it was published. As we all know, things changed. American whiteness in particular changed since Trump. So many people keep asking me, you know, what? So this book, it has 28 pages, including its cover, which was what I was able to do. in Bogliasco. So this is in a small sketchbook, 10 inches by 7 inches or so. So it's small format because I was carrying things around. So it starts with Donald Trump being elected, because that's where the revolution began. And it goes through some of the images and some of actually the text of the constructions of American whiteness since Trump. So there's Trump being elected. And then we look back, it was clear in 2016 that he was running as a white nationalist. And this is something very important for the way we think about and see white Americans. This is Richard Spencer, who was his big booster. And what's interesting about Spencer is his hair. I mean, in addition to his ideas and his role as a Trump booster, his hair is Nazi hair. They called it fasci. It's fasci fashion. So he said that when Trump was elected, that his people, that is white nationalists, should party like it's 1933. And he actually gave a Nazi salute at a meeting when Trump's triumph occurred. The next one. This is a book that I had never heard of before I started this project. It's called The Camp of Saints. And if you look at the image of the author, well, for one thing, I noted everybody's hair. So Jean Raspail has straight white royalist hair. And the text here, and this book also has text, is about white people or white countries, Europe, being overrun by the swarthy hordes. This book is a favorite of people like Richard Spencer and Steve Bannon and Steve Miller and so forth. So this was something I had never heard of before, and that figures in 2 or 3 of the pages of the book. The next one. As we go on, we get things changing, and you have the dates at the top. For this, the creation in 2013, but the 2015, 16, 17, 18, the importance of this image, Black Lives Matter, and the words and the meaning of Black Lives Matter. But for white people, for many white people who identified as white people, they began patrolling their white space. And so you have a space there of white space. And then some slogans that came up in response: all lives matter, blue lives matter, white lives matter, a white student union, it's okay to be white. And in case you wanted such a t-shirt, you can get it at Amazon.com. The next one is a new word coined in about 2015, relevant today after what happened in Central Park earlier this week, caucasity. And that is an English word which is a blend of Caucasian and audacious. And the image that goes along the side and then up the right side is the Becky who calls the police on Black people. She's become iconic, but we have several instances of white women who call the police on Black people who are just going about their lives. So that is an example of caucasity. Next one. Now, this is where we end for now, because I didn't have time to keep going. 2018, 2019, 2020, white people discovered their whiteness. There are other images and other pages on this theme, but this one plays off the Black Lives Matter response space, in which white space gets a line drawn across it. And what had been purely white space becomes multicultural space. And then the text is white people talking about their family members or their groups or people in public and tagging them as being white people in the way that Americans most commonly tag Black people. So that what the big change here is the identifying of whiteness, and the currency of whiteness has lost some of its luster. I think that's the last one of those, isn't it, Paola?
Yes.
Yes. So this is the kind of work I've been doing, and I will continue with this artist book, which pulls together my thinking and my imagery as a historian, as someone who writes in the sense of writes text, with the importance for me now of envisioning what I want to say. I no longer can write words without images. So for me, this is the way I think.
Wow, very interesting. Wonderful, thank you. So shall we move on to Trenton, and then everybody can ask questions. I will introduce Trenton, who is seen here working also when he came to our studio at Rutgers over 10 years ago in 2006. Trenton Doyle Hancock lives and works in Houston, where he's reaching us from. He obtained his BFA from Texas A&M University and his MFA from Tyler School of Art of Temple University in Philadelphia. He has been exhibiting since the mid-1990s, so for over 2 decades. His work is in very many museum collections and private collections, and has been included in a number of national and international group exhibitions that are major, including the Whitney Biennial twice and Prospect One New Orleans. And among his very many solo exhibitions, his impressive exhibition, Mind of the Mound, Critical Mass, at Mass MoCA in North Adams, Massachusetts, closed last fall. Thank you, Trenton, for being here. And I think you're unmuted and you can begin talking about your work.
Okay, and y'all can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Paola, for that introduction. Yeah, it's great reconnecting with you. We met first here in Houston, actually, when you were at the CAM.
Yes.
And I always enjoyed seeing your shows that you put on. I got introduced to many artists that way, and thank you for that. And yeah, reconnecting with the Brodsky Center and this work, you know, kind of diving back into it after having, you know, kind of more than 10 years between now and when I made this stuff. But yeah, what I'd like to talk about here is a little bit about what came before that work, what inspired it, and then what happened directly after that work. And so the Fix portfolio, which is a portfolio of about, I think it's 20 images, including the colophon page and the title page, are an excerpt from a larger body of work, which I guess I should go back a little bit. I'm a storyteller, and I when I first started out, I guess making work in exhibiting work, I wanted to do something that in some ways subverted the utility of the gallery space, that was going somewhat against the grain. In academia, I was always sort of taught that, you know, you shy away from explicit storytelling, and things have to be codified in a certain kind of way to be acceptable. And I wanted to be a comic book artist my whole life. I groomed myself from middle school all the way through high school to do just that. And I had a portfolio, and you know, I wanted to go work for Marvel Comics. That was my thing. But ended up going to college and basically learning about art history, in just how many different ways I could use my creativity to express, you know, the personal, you know, stories that I felt were in me. And but I never lost sight of this idea that the comic book world or the illustration world, all of that was very special to me. So I quickly learned that, especially in academia, there's this push to split these forms and formats, and there has to be, you're either one or the other. You're lowbrow or what's called low art, or you're, you know, fine art, which will be considered, you know, higher up on the totem pole. And I was convinced that there was something somewhere in between, and that's where my comfort zone lied, and that's where the true expression for me was going to be. So all through school, I worked for the school newspaper. So I worked as an editorial cartoonist, commenting on, you know, various political essays and things. So I was the visual side of what was the textual side of things. But you know, that was sort of my side job. And then of course I'm taking my course load, which was like painting or performance or sculpture, and, you know, so on and so forth. So a pretty whole view of what art could be. And yeah, and sort of all these investigations that were going on the side that I was just interested in. So ultimately, I added all those things together when I came into my own as an artist and started exhibiting. And what I wanted to really do was turn the gallery space into a giant graphic novel, so that when people walked in, they felt as if something was wrong, maybe like they might have walked into the wrong place, because what I would do was scrawl text all over the wall. So there was sometimes no part of the gallery that wasn't covered in words. I don't do that as much anymore because I'm actually embarking on actual graphic novels. So all of that energy is getting funneled into to books. But in the beginning, I had no interest in actually becoming a graphic novelist because I wanted to figure out this new hybrid way of telling stories, by mixing, you know, modernist painting, by mixing underground comics, by mixing, you know, all these different types of commentary into one new form, and it worked out. It was a very freeing thing to be able to do. So when I got the call to come to Rutgers to the Brodsky Center, I had already completed 2 or 3 separate story arcs or bodies of work, and which included printmaking, painting, performances, and all kinds of installations and things. But what I wanted to bring in, so basically there's a multidisciplinary, the kind of approach that I like to take to work, And I wanted to bring that to these prints. This is a page from a sketchbook that I tore out that I used as inspiration to move on to some of the fixed images. The story, the larger story arc, and I'll try to sum this up rather quickly, is that I just wanted to see myself in the fantasy space and the sci-fi space, because there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me in that space. I love Star Wars. I love, Lord of the Rings, but we're the black folks. There's no one that looks like me. So I took it even further, and it was like, well, then the creator of this new universe will be sort of the man behind the curtain. And so everything kind of gets drawn back to this kind of, potato head looking face I have here with glasses on it. So when you pull that curtain back, that's what's always there. No matter how far you dig through all of the various stories I tell, you'll get back to this thing right here. And so that's sort of where I began. And it's not just about, you recognizing my face in the work. There's something beyond that I don't put a mark down, or at least I may put a mark down and then not trust it, and you'll never see that mark from me. But a mark has to have residue, like something personal in it, for me to endorse it. And therefore it keeps living and kind of then ultimately gets a history behind it. And so everything is really, it's additive, but it does have to go through this process of, being accepted, I guess. And that qualification is that, yeah, it has to bear something of my own DNA. And so anyway, the fixed body of work was about these characters that I had created that were basically I was raised in this very strict Christian household, and I wanted to comment on that because at the time in the late 90s, I found it a really crippling thing, like to move forward and to not be angry about having been raised that way. So instead of attacking Christians directly, I created these characters called vegans, which were loosely based on real life, very preachy vegans, idealists that have taken their ideas to the nth degree, to the point that it's not only detrimental to themselves, but to the rest of society. So they become this a clot of or a mass of many different minds, but it becomes this sort of hive mind. And they were sort of the bad guys in my universe for a bit. But then I wanted to have a story that focused on some of these vegans that wanted to be good. So there was this vegan priest named Saint Sesame, and he gathered up his band of good vegans, and they went around preaching in the underworld to the rest of the vegans to be good and to try to regain their humanity by drinking the juice from this character that's called a mound. And it's this pink liquid that is basically salvation and is going to lead them back to humanity. So that actually brings us to this body of work, which is called Fix. So what happened is that they took this sacrament, which was their, the meal for their salvation, and started abusing it over time. And they needed, after a while, they needed to get their fix. And they would inject this or ingest it or take it into their body in various ways and see colors. And the color would lead them to a new way of life. But what I wanted to hit the ground running with in this work, literally hit the ground running, I guess that's that piece, is a sense, like it's not spelled out. There's not a lot of text in these works, but I want there to be a kind of a sense of impending dread, or something that is prickly, that's, you know, just around the corner, like you can sense it. So these, I wouldn't consider these the happy, you know, exciting time in that era for vegans. Like this is like things are starting to get weird for them, where they're on their way to regaining humanity, but they're kind of overdoing it. And so that's sort of where these images come from. So there's a lot of paranoia that's embedded in these images. Characters peeking around corners or being in danger of being covered up by something else. There was a few images back, there were photogravures of the actual printmakers that I was working with. I think Randy Hemminghouse was featured there. Yeah, a guy named Chris, and I forget the lady's name that was also one of the printers, that I was working with. But I decided to, just get photos of them. We turned them into photogravures, and these were sort of images of them being, you know, having half of their face eradicated and turned. So it's like, are they turning into something, or did they start as vegans and turn into humans? But yeah, that was kind of a new and exciting thing for me to kind of work with these actual photos of people. And then after, let's see, what are the last works here?
Then this is the last image.
Okay. And then and then we have the paintings. These are some of the images that I made directly after those prints were made. So probably a year later or so. So you could see that the large kind of image that you see on the screen with pink and the hand coming down, that's taken from the prints. So there were images in the suite that were based on drawings that I made before, and then from the actual prints, I then used those to make paintings afterwards, or they inspired me to make things afterwards. So I think for some printmakers, the idea of doing that is to simply replicate, you know, something that they've already made. For me, I've never thought of them that way. It's a way for me to very quickly and efficiently work through many ideas, whether it's finding new colorways for the to trust new kinds of color, or to trust new types of line, to turn a white image black, turn a black image white. You know, you can do all kinds of things rather quickly. And so that actually helped me move on to what these pieces are. So it's all very organic for me. This is some of the stuff that's going on in my studio right now. What you're seeing there is, it's about a 9 foot long, maybe it's a 6 by 9 foot image, flanked by some smaller images. So the pink paintings are another different investigation. They just, all these happen to be on the same wall right now. But I'm trained as a printmaker. So when I was an undergraduate, you know, I was taking etching courses, taking silkscreen. And there's something that I really loved about the plates, the fact that you could go to the plate as a site and you could do anything to it. You could really abuse that thing. You could pour acid on it. You can really burn away things until it's almost nothing there. Or you can be really delicate and deliberate about line work. And, you know, in that way you kind of attach yourself to this classical history of etching, of engraving, and that type of thing. And that way of building up the marks to create form is something that I feel connects me to a larger history, but it's also, I feel like something that helps me calibrate form in a really controlled way. And so what you're seeing in this piece is just, I guess, millions of marks on paper that are then ultimately going to be glued down to this canvas support. But I always give myself the license to dig back into, paint over, eradicate, cut away any aspect of an image to ultimately give it more physicality, give it more history. So it's as much as this is a way to edit work, it's also a way for me to kind of build kind of muscularity for the work as well. But yeah, so that evidence of printmaking kind of goes, you can see it in this type of work, kind of one-to-one. You go, oh yeah, this is someone who either has studied as an etcher or respects the history of etching greatly. And this is another piece which, you know, I'm just digging. I gave myself the challenge for these two works that you just saw are looking at, to take because I'm in the middle of making a giant graphic novel, which is all ink on paper, and it's like right now I'm about 200 pages in, maybe 250 pages into this thing, and I wanted to bring that energy back into the paintings. Because oftentimes with the painted work, I'm taking the brush to the canvas or brush to paper, and it's a different type of line. It's a different type of investment. But with this, I wanted to just take all of that energy from the graphic novel and just see, because I didn't know what it would look like. I like put it all into a couple of works just to see what would happen. And so this is sort of an experiment. It's, you know, these are going to be probably some of the most dense works I've ever made. But, you know, since we're talking about printmaking, I feel like these would be great to show because it shows sort of what I've learned from etching, really.
Awesome. Thank you, Trenton. This is wonderful. I'm going to just stop sharing the screen and take it back to everybody in the room, in this Zoom room, and open it up to questions.
Paola?
Yes.
I have a question for Trenton first, an artist question. What kind of adhesive does he use?
I use gel medium.
Oh, really? Okay.
Acrylic gel medium.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I guess if you have questions, maybe you can just visually raise your hand if you're not raising the hand through the Zoom function of raising the hand. Anybody? Let's see. Oh, here's Brooke. Yep.
Hi, Paola. Thank you so much.
Hi, Brooke.
Oh,
How are you?
I'm good. I hope you're doing good. Yes. I've got my better half here tonight.
Hi, Trenton.
Hey, how's it going, Jay?
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Hey, Brooke.
Hi, Trenton. Nell and Trenton, thank you both so much. You've got me thinking a lot about the exhibitions that are currently on view at PAFA that we unfortunately can't see. Yes. We worked closely with Paola on a season that was exploring printmaking, exploring creativity and experimentation and collaboration. And I think understanding that both of you have a studio practice that is you and the work, I was wondering if you could talk at all, either of you or both of you, about the collaborative nature of working with a place like the Brodsky Center.
Well, I would say it was absolute heaven for me. Because well, one of the things I love about printmaking is the multiple nature of it, which means that you can take one concept and do a lot of things with it. But if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you can waste a lot of time and waste a lot of paper. You can just waste. Some of that waste comes out really beautifully, but some doesn't. And so having Randy Hemminghouse as my master printer, and also he was able to make some suggestions through the technique that I just didn't know. So I just loved it. If I'd had my way, I just would have stayed at the Brodsky Center. I'd still be there now.
We'd love to have you back.
You will return, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, I'll speak to that question as well. Yeah, I find that working with print houses, or in general, but it's especially working at the Brodsky Center, it was really great because Randy, like Nell said, was able to suggest things that you know, especially if you come in as very open and your ideas are, I mean, you can come in with ideas, but I feel like the benefit of working with a printmaker, a master printer, and is that they have things that they can bring to the table that you just aren't, you wouldn't go there because you might have a more linear idea of what your work is about. But I think the beauty of printmaking is that it's capable of fractalating what you're already thinking into sometimes things that are perhaps more provocative than what you actually brought in. And the master printer will be able to tease that stuff out. So at that point, it does really become collaborative if you're willing to let it.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Any questions? And if you don't have any questions, oh, Lee has a question. Can you unmute Lee?
Got it. Hi. So I don't know if this point has been talked out too much over the past 2 months, but I was wondering, how the quarantine has affected your practice. Because as an artist myself, it's definitely affected mine. A lot of challenges. So I was just wondering, if you could speak about that.
Trenton?
Oh, okay. In a lot of ways, it hasn't affected me at all because I don't leave the house much. I go to the studio and I go home, and I have food delivered to me. So in some ways, the world is catching up with where my wife and I. She's also an artist, and we work very similarly. So, but there are obvious, kind of if you hiccups is understatement, but I have a studio assistant, and we've both agreed to social distance ourselves from one another. And so there's days where he'll be in the studio and I'll be at home working, and we always have to be mindful of where we both are. And so giving instruction remotely, has become, just a new norm.
For me, my husband and I were in Italy, and we got out of Genoa the last day it was possible to get out. Wow. So I have actually written an answer to your question, Lee, and published it in the MacDowell website. And it's about the coronavirus and my art. My jobs, when I first came back and we were in self-quarantine here, was actually writing rather than making art. But I think I would have felt the same. I was absolutely blasted. I had no energy. I was totally lethargic. It was as if someone were sitting on me. The only way I could motivate myself to do anything was to set a timer.
Wow.
We do have a hand. I can see Gus. I'm going to unmute you, Gus.
About the reactions you got to this book. It's an incredible read, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I'm wondering what kind of feedback you've gotten on it, both positive and negative. Things you liked, things you didn't.
The only negative, I only got one negative feedback, and somebody on my Instagram page said it was too academic. So, but otherwise, it's been a very popular book. It came out 2 years ago. It earned out its advance very quickly. By the end of its first calendar year, it was in its 4th printing. So, you know, it's just a really popular book.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Do you give a little context for those who might not be familiar now with the book too?
Oh, yeah. The book is Old in Art School, a memoir of starting over. And it's my memoir of being an old lady in art school. And I don't know if there is a world that is more ageist than art. Maybe fashion, I don't know. But being an old lady in art school was my big challenge. People say, oh, you were Black, oh, you're female, oh, you're a Black woman. No, the big challenge was being old. And so I talk about it really honestly. And that's what people appreciate.
Wow.
And Trenton, you're in it.
Oh. Well,
Wonderful. Go ahead, Trenton. Did you want to say something?
Oh no, yeah, well, I need to get that book, and I need to not because I'm in it, because I'm super interested to hear your perspective.
Okay. I wanted to circle back to the theme of this talk, the personal and the political, and also to what Brooke asked you about the collaborative aspect. And I wonder if when you do political work, when you inject a stance that is about thinking and making us think about where we live now, how we live now, and what is happening, and how is our life determined politically. If that is a collaborative view, is a political stance a collaborative view that allows you to have a conversation with your audiences?
Golly. For me, yes, I think so. I think so. But I must say, my personal work does that also, because since so much of my work is about me, people are very happy to see images. To see an image of a Black woman, of an old Black woman, of a Black woman who is a thoughtful person. It is kind of a political act in itself. I don't feel that making art is necessarily a political act. Some of my fellow artists disagree with that, but that's how I feel. But when I started making political art, it wasn't collaborative. It was something that my eyes, my visual part said, you need to do this, and this is how you do it. I say that I have a reptilian brain that tells me what to do. I have two, actually. One writes and the other one draws, and they collaborate. And they don't necessarily work in harmony, or at least they don't tell me what to do at the same time. But they do tell me what to do. It's not my head brain, it's my reptilian brain, my gut brain.
I would say that I feel like being a a Black artist is somewhat I mean, the Black body is already politicized. So
right,
it's
right,
like,
right.
And I remember when my career first started out, I got these questions a lot more about where's the Black in your work, or, people really wanted to hear about that or know about it. And for me, as much as it was just exciting to be having people talk to me like about my art, it was just such a new thing and very exciting, especially at that scale and that kind of forum. A couple of years of that constantly is like, oh, is that what this is? And do I have to constantly acknowledge Blackness? Is that the first door we have to go in every time you see me and you see my work? And so that's in some ways where the fantasy came. And I think there's a double-edged sword to working in fantasy or science fiction, is that, when someone like Paul Verhoeven, who did RoboCop and, Starship Troopers, you'll ask people about those films, and because to me, those are hyper-political like movies, like what he was able to do in Total Recall as well, at that trilogy. People say, oh yeah, it was just great escapism, it was great science fiction, great fantasy or whatever. And I'm like, really? That stuff is so pointed. But I think I'm able to make this work, and I kind of fit myself into this category of, this epic saga that's happening, where there's all kinds of codified things that are going on underneath. It's like the vegans, become the idealists in these, stand-ins for Christianity. They're little white goblins, that are, attacking the Black protagonist, who's the flawed Black man who's the superhero, but he's got this dubious sort of kind of standing. So there's ways for me to interject my commentary about just existing and being, and you can say it's being in the universe, being in the world, being an American. Like, you could kind of look through all those lenses, and when you focus it out, it comes very clear, I think, what I'm doing. But with currently, I'm doing, like I said, a graphic novel, which is me attempting to tease out and make a bit more explicit some of these themes. And it's an exciting kind of step for me because, for a long time as the narrator, I feel like, okay, I'm hiding behind these characters that I create. Well, with this new work, there's a little bit more accountability. That's like me stepping out in front and saying, oh no, these are my ideas. And a little bit more pointed in that way. So, but the paintings, I'm still allowing them to be the paintings and do this a little bit more amorphous, strange thing that they're slippery. You don't know where it is. But with the comics, it's, kind of like what Nell was saying, where you're kind of able to split out these different aspects of yourself and do, you don't have to go just down one track. You can really honor the aspects of yourself and have that be your work.
Fantastic. I've learned a lot. Well, I think it's now 6:30, over 6:30, and everybody's ready to go to dinner or drink more wine. But I wanted to thank you so much, all of you, for participating today, for coming to meet Nell and Trenton. And I look forward to staying in touch with all of you. Abby, Sarah wants to say so. Oh, Sarah says, clapping her hands. And Abby, anything to add?
I wanted to thank you, Paula, and I wanted to put in one quick more plug that this is a 2-day celebration of the Brodsky Center in a way. It's highlighting the sale they have going on, and I want to drop a quick link to that. And then also tomorrow we have Art at Noon, our noon program. We have 3 other wonderful artists who have all collaborated with the Brodsky Center that will be speaking with us. I'm going to drop that link in really quickly too. I think I just not good at typing and talking, but I did want to, again, thank you, Paula. Thank you, Nell. Thank you, Trenton. That was wonderful. And we hope to see all of you again for a future.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
bye.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Bye.
All right.
Feel free to unmute yourself and say bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to
Thank
see you.
Bye. Nice to see you all.
This is great.
Bye.